Yeah. I didn't even realize it until you guys got here. I hadn't thought to look at it, but tomorrow's the first day of fall.
It is. It's
Feels
been
good
feeling
out there, too. Yeah.
Man, this past weekend, for sure.
It was
Very fallish.
a welcome, because I've been kind of remembering last year as we rolled into the opening weekend of bow season last year. I think it was 97, 96, 98 degrees to welcome in the deer season.
To talk about getting your meat on ice.
We had to talk
quickly.
about hydrating before you went hunting. I mean, drink a Gatorade. Not so now. It's welcome, and I think some of the little dove birds have moved on south. That first little wave has kind of moved on. People are hit or miss on some teal.
I've heard good reports, but it's always spotty.
Yeah, and so it's actually a good time to be outside, and you're not going to sweat to death, or the bugs are kind of at bay. So it's a good time to get out there and start kind of getting back into the fall swing of things.
Well, and it's not quite, but it's a lot closer to hunting weather outside than it's been for quite a while.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Let's be honest. We'd like it to drop about 20 degrees. Then we'd start getting in the neighborhood of hunting season and hunting weather, I should say. But we're close enough. We'll take it. And you mentioned the teal's been kind of spotty. I assume we talked about this last week. I assume that's got something to do with all the tropical activity. Every time we get one out of the way, here comes another one.
Yeah, and that probably may move them around a little bit, while they're here. But like Houston was saying last week, they're one of the few waterfowl species that it's probably not fair to say they're not weather dependent at all, and that they do kind of move with fronts, but they're not like mallards or other ducks where they're going to stay up north till cold weather. They're going all the way down to Argentina in South America, which is a pretty long haul, so they get started really, really early.
And they do it in about a month.
Yeah, that's right.
And so a month and a half. So it's not like they're just hanging around very long anywhere. They got somewhere on their mind, and they get there pretty quick. Which if you think about the length of that flight, that is pretty amazing.
But I do think here locally, the little weather patterns and stuff will move them around, and
make them a little harder to pin down, probably as much as anything.
Heard some great. I personally have not partaken, but I've heard others that have done really well.
Yeah, I mean, you may go scout something out Tuesday afternoon or whatever, and then show up Wednesday with some gloomy hopes, and they showed up overnight, or in an instant your hunt turns into a success. So you just got to go when you can go.
So speaking of fall stuff, youth squirrel season opens this Thursday. So, again, it's just weird. 2020 is probably a year that most everybody would maybe like to have a reset or a forget about or whatever. But it just seems crazy. We're here. We're up against it. It's fall. We've made it.
October next week.
Yeah.
It is amazing. And youth squirrel season, we talked about this last week, too, and I'm in the same boat. For a lot of people, that's their introduction to hunting.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's right.
They go squirrel, that's their first experience with it. So that's an important thing, the youth squirrel season, because that's the start of a lifetime of hunting for a lot of people.
All right.
And those kids, they like to get out there, and they like to romp and stomp and look at stuff, and they're exploring and they're learning, and that's so for me and my little offspring, to be able to move around and not have to sit and be still and be quiet. And I mean, who likes to do that, really?
Yeah.
When you're that young. So it's a great way. Don't overlook that. Get out there and take a kid hunting.
Now, Dave season is closed now in the South Zone. Right? I'm just swapping the two. If I'm Dove, then it's Dave season.
You should stick with Dave for the regular, the regular JT program. But when we switch out to Mississippi Outdoors, you can take on a whole new persona.
Dove Hughes.
Hughes. Yeah.
I'm Dove Hughes. Nice to meet you.
So
it is a second set of cards printed now. Thanks.
It did close in the South Zone yesterday, I believe, and but the North Zone, which is the majority of the state, is probably not quite accurate to call it a South versus North, because there's a lot of Southwest Mississippi that's actually in the North Zone. But if you're in that part of the state, you've still got a while to go. But if you're in kind of that south of 84, east of 35 quadrant, you got to stop for a little bit, take a break.
But everybody else,
keep
still
going. And then,
speed ahead.
like we're talking about, teal season still open through the 27th. So, we've got opportunities available now, and more will be coming pretty quick. I mean, we're a little more than a week out from bow season.
We're there.
Yeah.
It took forever, but we're there.
Yeah.
Now, duck draws. We talked about those a little bit last week too. But there are some, and we got into it last week with Houston, but something to do with the standby options.
Right. Well, and I'll let Russ interject some of this, but the agency had decided to make some changes to how the duck draws were done in response to COVID and trying to not have people congregate. And initially that included we were going to completely do away with what we call the standby option, which is basically when we do the draws, if somebody doesn't show up for a drawn slot, that slot's available for someone who may could show up day of. So for the hunter, it's always a little bit of a risk, I guess, going there for a standby because you're not guaranteed that. But most of the time we fill the majority of the standbys. But we did hear from the public and have made some adjustments to what we talked about last week.
Yeah, so there was a lot of comment after last week and the discussion about having standby options. And so the decision was made, and primarily the standby opportunity, the majority of it comes on 3 of our WMAs in the Delta. That's Mahana, Muscadine, and Howard Miller. So the decision was made that we would have standby opportunity on those 3 WMAs this year. So we will still do the preseason draws. We'll draw for all of the dates and all of the units prior to the season. But for those days that are open, if individuals do not show up for that slot they were drawn for, then we will have standby opportunity for those hunters that choose to want to show up then. So there will be some limited opportunity for standby based on further discussion and public input over the last week.
But it sounds like it's going to be even more of a long shot than it normally is to get one of those standby spots this year.
Well, what we hope is it's going to be a good mixture. So drawing everything preseason, what we hope is that hunters will, given they'll know the WMA, the date, and the unit that they are drawn for, they will have that opportunity to go scout that hole and know where it is prior to the season, as well as they can get intel on whether there's waterfowl, where waterfowl are on that WMA. So we hope that it will be a great incentive for people to show up for those hunts. But inevitably, that's not going to happen because for whatever reason, people can't always come for their hunt. So that's going to provide that opportunity for those that hunt standby to get opportunity for those slots on those days. So I think it's going to be a good mixture for both.
And ultimately that's the goal, is to get as many people out hunting as you possibly can in this process.
Right. And, our waterfowl centric WMAs there in the Delta are really popular. Good duck hunting land is a limited commodity over there, and we got some great areas that, people come from a long way around to hunt some of those WMAs.
But outside of the draw WMAs, it's always important to remember we still have a large number of WMAs that have open waterfowl opportunity, no draw required, and a lot of good duck hunting. So there's really something for everybody.
We're up against the break. When we come back, let's get into everybody's favorite subject, it seems, and that's CWD. We'll talk about that as we get ready for bow season to open next on Mississippi Outdoors Radio. Welcome back, Mississippi Outdoors Radio on Super Talk Mississippi. And before we get into CWD, I said we were going into that, and we are, but we got a couple of final things to clear up on the duck draws with the changes that went into effect, right?
Yeah, just a reminder that they open October the 1st and they run through October the 15th. So if you want to put in an application, make sure that you do that between the 1st and the 15th, and the draws will be conducted after that, before November 1st.
Fantastic. And Chris, you had a question about when they could scout?
Yeah, we had a call in today about some of the management areas over there and the days that can be used for scouting. Like, for instance, Phil Bryan is different than Mahana. Correct?
Yeah, if they want to go scout, they just need to make sure they look at the regs on what days they can go and what days it's open to do that.
Yeah, and so for everybody listening out there, if you're looking at a management area, a lot of times people call in and the stuff is there. Just look for it area specific, because all management areas have different rules applicable to each different area. And like today, when I looked for the person that called in, at the bottom there it says you can scout up until October 1st and yada yada. So do a little looking on the front end, so you won't be disappointed on the back end.
Yeah, well, you can save yourself time and you can save yourself problems if you just go and check that out ahead of time on the website, right?
That's it. It's right there.
Fantastic. Now let's get into CWD, guys. Where are we at with this? I know we've got all the numbers put together, and Russ, what are we looking at right now? Yeah,
so certainly not a topic that we wish we had to talk about, but we do because it's here and it's something that we're going to be dealing with. Today we sit at 56 positives, and so several of those have come at us over actually the summer. We had folks that reported sick deer that they saw. These were actually in Benton County, areas where we have found positives already. And so these deer did turn out to be positive, CWD positive deer. And again, that's just another testament to the power of hunters and the general public. If you see deer out there that don't look right, that may think are sick, report them to us, and we'll do everything we can, if possible, to get a sample if we need to, and investigate that deer. Because again, the last 2 deer that we have detected this summer were both reported to us by a hunter that said, "Hey, these deer, they're in my food plot. They don't look right." We pulled a sample, and it turns out they were positive. And again, the very first deer that was found in Mississippi was reported to us by a hunter. So please continue to be vigilant. And if you see deer that just don't look right, let us know.
Well, and I've heard it referred to before. It's like a zombie deer walking around, basically. What are you looking for? When you say they don't look right, what do you mean?
Yep, so when deer actually become clinical with CWD, so they carry the disease for anywhere from 18 to 24 months before they begin to show actual signs of the disease impacting them physically. And so they'll start to lose weight rapidly. They'll start to salivate. They'll start to have this kind of faraway look in their eyes. At times they'll just stand around, in one place for a long period of time. Their head will be drooping. Just obviously not deer behavior. And they may not be afraid. They stop eating. And so they do not look like a normal deer acts. They're not cognizant of things going on around them. So you see deer that are acting like that. Those are the kind of deer we want to know about.
Now, are most of the positives still up in the northwest corner?
Most of the ones that we detected in the last, over the last sampling year, have been in Benton, Marshall counties. They're certainly with the disease, the way that it spreads, it could be in other counties, it could be in other areas, and that's why sampling is so important. But yes, over the last sampling season, Benton, Marshall counties have been where the positives have been found.
Well, and I noticed you talking about sampling. I noticed on the map where you've got the count per county of samples taken, the further south you get, the lower that number drops in each of the counties. I assume that's because hunters think, oh, well, that's up in the north. I don't have to worry about that right now, and they're not paying as much attention to it. Would that be a fair assumption?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it is, it's not directly impacting me right now, so I may not be as concerned about it. But, Esquina County was not really on the radar to be a county you would think we would find it in, right? You would think other counties may be more we'd be more apt to find it, but that was where we first found it. So you really, it could be anywhere, and so we really want hunters to submit those samples, and hunters really are the front line to helping manage this disease, and so samples from all 82 counties are very important.
Well, and you know me, I'm a homer. We were talking about it before we went on the air. I'm looking down here. Pike County, that 18 just ain't going to work because I know you took more than that. Trust me, I know you did. I have Facebook. I saw all the pictures. So, yeah, no, we got to get those numbers up across the state because that, I would assume, lets you better track the spread of it and help better contain the spread of it if you know where it's going.
That's right. Geographically, we have to know where it is. And so over time, we can monitor, where it is, how it's spreading, how fast it's spreading, those kind of things. And those all factor into how we devise management plans for this disease. And so those samples are very, very critical. And we can't get those samples on our own. Hunters are the key for this. If you look at all the samples we've collected really over the last 2 years, the lion's share of those have come from hunters submitting those samples, and they've done a great job of that, and we applaud them for that. But they have to keep at it, keep harvesting deer, keep doing what you've always been doing, but submit those samples.
And we need more than what we're getting.
That's right. So the past couple of seasons we've had a target of 10,000. We've not quite gotten there over the last couple of seasons. We've gotten really close. Again, last year we ended the season with almost 8,500 samples, and that's fantastic. That's a great number. But we do need more samples, and like you stated, South Mississippi, really anywhere south of Highway 84, south of I-20, but certainly south of 84, we need those samples.
Yeah, and just looking at the spread, you're not getting them from South Mississippi, from the southmost counties, not in the numbers that you need. You're getting some, but it's a trickle.
That's right. Still need more. Can't ever have too many samples. And again, our goal this year is 10,000 samples, and we want to try to hit that goal.
Now, I would assume that that's why you track them by county, so you can see where you need to put a little focus and put a little more attention to get the word out and to get people motivated to do this, right?
That's exactly right, and that helps us, knowing the numbers from the counties, that helps us monitor what we call prevalence of the disease. How many deer, and let's say 100 deer, however many it may be, had the disease. But also, yes, it helps track us where we're doing well on sampling and where we need to do better. And also, the freezer locations, and we'll talk about that here a little bit later. But as we get into setting up areas for folks to come and drop those samples off, looking at where we've gotten samples or where we need more samples, and maybe it's a logistics thing for hunters. Maybe we need more opportunity for them. Those numbers help us to determine that. So not only is it from a disease management standpoint, it's a logistic thing. We're trying to make this as easy as possible for hunters.
Yeah, and in an election year, the best comparison that I can think of off the top of my head that people might be able to relate to is it's like a poll for who's going to win an election. If you don't poll enough people, you don't know. You have no idea. So you've got to get those polling numbers up, if you will, on CWD samples. But how do you do that? I mean, how do you motivate more people in these counties that are underreporting, just to use the phrase that seems appropriate to me? How do you motivate them and get them fired up to get those samples in?
Right. And polling is a good analogy because for this disease, when it's in a low prevalence, it takes a lot of samples to detect the disease. It's hard to detect when it's again at a very low prevalence, and we want a low prevalence. But if we want to find it, if it's there, then it takes a lot of sample numbers. But what hunters, we constantly remind hunters of this, that they are the key to us being successful with CWD management. If you look at all of the conservation challenges that we've faced over the last 100 years. Those that go out and hunt and fish and buy hunting licenses, they are the people, the men and women that have helped us be successful in addressing these conservation challenges. And this is the same thing. We need you to submit those samples so that we can monitor for this disease, because it ultimately is going to impact the resources for us, but really for our kids and grandkids. And so we want to do everything we can right now, not wait 10 years down the road and go, boy, I wish we would have done something about that. Do things right now so that we can do all that we can for the resource for really our kids and our grandkids. And that's why, stopping by a freezer, dropping a head off, it only takes a minute or two, can go a long, long way in doing your part for conservation.
Well, and I think it's an obvious statement, but by the time you have a problem with it in your county, it's too late to contain it and keep it out. And you don't know it's starting to ease in unless you're giving those samples. That's the only way you guys can track this right. And say, hey, whoa, watch out, we gotta take care of this, because there are some things, and we can talk about that in the next segment as well. There are some things that you cannot do in a CWD zone, and those are for very good reasons to try to help contain this and try to help slow the spread of this. And you also talked about the drop-off freezers. I'd love to talk about that because Absolutely. You said we'd get back to it, so right. I'm going to hold you to it.
Sure.
We got Russ Walsh. Along with Adam and Chris, Mississippi Outdoors Radio, and we will continue with the Gateway Getaway coming up next. Welcome back to Mississippi Outdoors Radio, and it's time for your Gateway Getaway. And this week, your Gateway Getaway, Paul B. Johnson State Park down in Hattiesburg, right in the middle of the Pine Belt region. It's the gateway to a natural wonderland marked by majestic longleaf and loblolly pines, dogwoods, and oaks. Adam, your writing's getting better and better. The campus of USM, just a 20-minute drive to the north, making this park the perfect place to spend a sports weekend. Paul B. Johnson State Park offers 19 cabins, 125 RV sites, picnic pavilions, a playground, splash pad, disc golf, a nature trail, fishing, and boating. All of that on the 225-acre Geiger Lake. Trust me, you can find something to enjoy at Paul B. Johnson State Park. They also offer group camping, a meeting facility, and a chapel on site if you want to get hitched up. They can take care of that, too. You can make your reservation by calling 1-800-467-2757. You can call the park directly at 601-582-7721. And don't forget, annual park permits. $50, you get access to all of the state parks for a solid year. That is a deal and a half, let me tell you. If you need more info on that, call 601-432-2219. Today's Gateway Getaway, Paul B. Johnson State Park.
Now, Dave, I have to interject here. I can't in good conscience claim anything with the Gateway Getaway. That's Miss Janice. Miss Janice.
Okay, so she's the one with the writing talent.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you need to be thanking her.
Well, I definitely want to thank Miss Janice, and I should have realized it was far too nicely written to have come from Adam.
Well, I mean, he was truthful enough to give credit where credit was due, and we have to applaud him for that.
Yes, that is the sign of
so
a true
he still
leader.
gets some applause at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's what's important, guys. Come on, that's what's important. Now, Russ,
Old Butler.
Before the break, we were talking about CWD, and one thing I wanted to get back to is the drop-off freezer locations, because that has been the discussion, because you can't transport deer out of a CWD zone.
Portions of the deer, that's right. Usually only deboned meat, yes.
Yeah. So the freezer locations are very important, and specifically how many there are for people to go to. Are there any changes coming up about that?
Yeah, well, and I back up real quick. Deboned meat, clean skull plates, finished taxidermy products, those types of things can be removed from the zone. Like whole carcasses or portions thereof cannot be moved from a CWD zone. Freezer locations, and these are really, again, the way that we get a lot of these samples over the past couple of years. Last year we had 37 freezers. This year we're starting the season with 46. So again, increasing that opportunity for hunters to be able to come by and drop those samples off. Our new CWD guide is now online, so all of the freezer locations are up for hunters to go take a look. We have them, again, in more than half the counties now. So a lot of opportunity for folks to come by and drop those samples off. Again, 46 going to be scattered from North Mississippi all the way to the coast.
So it's not going to be a long drive.
No, pretty much anywhere you are in the state, you're within easy striking distance of a freezer.
And that's the goal.
That's right.
You got to make it as easy as possible.
Make it as easy as possible for you to come by and drop that sample off. And literally, it only takes a few minutes. If you already detached the head, at the hunting camp, you come by, you drop that head off, you fill out a card, you take that card with you, and then, once we submit that sample for testing, we put those results back online. So, last year our turnaround was about 8 days. From the time we got the sample to the time you got your results was about 8 days. So, in some folks, they want to hold that deer meat till they get their test results. So we're able to turn those samples around pretty quick.
Now, and I understand wanting to hold it, because, I would too in that situation, but have we yet to see a proven link to where this can be transmitted to humans?
No, so there's never been any documented case where CWD has crossed the human barrier. Now, we always caution people that, CWD is still something that's being researched. And so could it be possible that it does do that one day? Sure, but for right now, there is no evidence that it does cross into humans by eating infected deer meat. So again, hunters continue to go out there, harvest deer, eat deer, enjoy the resource.
Well, and I think that's probably leading me into the answer to the question Scott and Clinton has on the C Spire text line. Major, this is probably for you, I would say.
All righty.
If a harvested deer tests positive, does it count against your bag limit?
Russ, I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, so initially it does, but if you harvest a positive animal and you submit that animal to us, we're going to dispose of that animal. So if you give us that deer, then we will issue a tag for you to go out and harvest basically a replacement deer.
So, in other words, you can't keep that deer and then go get another one.
That's right.
You can either bring that positive deer, the whole thing, back in. Would that even count if, say, they had already taken and gotten it processed?
No, if you have the processed animal and it turns out it was positive, if you relinquish that deer to us, we will give you a tag.
Okay, so even if it's been processed.
That's right.
And that's changed from the first year, correct?
Yeah, we didn't have the tags until
we kind of fluidly adapted as
right.
we've gone forward. Yep.
No, that's the order of the year with everything right now, isn't it? You just kind of got to adapt as you go. And we've answered this one already, Debbie in Hattiesburg. This is a different one. What do you do for deer killed on the highway?
So over the last number of years, we have sampled what we call roadkill, and they are an important part of our sampling. We are not relying as heavily on those deer as we have in the past, and actually, a couple of our positive animals have been from roadkills or deer that the Pontotoc deer wandered up in somebody's yard and incidental kill. But the first Marshall County deer that we found that was positive was a roadkill. So those samples are important to us. Now there's so many of them that there's no way that we physically, logistically can sample all of those. But throughout the season, we do collect some roadkill samples.
Scott in Rankin County, if we see a deer and suspected of having CWD and we contact your office, can we then terminate the deer?
There's a couple of things to that question. Certainly, if it is not in season, then no, we don't want you to do that. If it is in season, if it is deer season and it can be safely and legally euthanized, then certainly you can do that, and we can coordinate getting that sample from you. But we want you to abide by all laws, rules, regulations, be within season. We don't want folks just out there, euthanizing deer because they think it looks sick. We want to have those conversations first about what's going on with that deer, where it is, when it is, those kind of things.
Major E would like to thank you, and I'm pretty sure he's got a $5 bill for you after the show for outlining that for him.
Well, Russ is always going to he's going to give it the correct answer. I think highly of old Russ, but he was so true in telling folks don't just go out there and become a expert on the hoof biologist and say, that deer's got CWD and shoot it, because it's still bound to the seasons and the dates, and most times we'll try to send out a biologist or an officer to go check it out.
That's right.
And if it is in fact in need of being euthanized, they'll do it. Not just Wild West shoot them up.
We're not looking for CWD vigilantes is what I'm hearing.
No.
Okay.
There's plenty of legal hunting season to go out and harvest all the deer you want.
But the way you explain it, the drop-off process is very simple. Now at 46, I think
That's right,
you said?
46
different
locations.
freezers?
That's right.
Just take you a couple of minutes, then you move on with your life, and then if you want to hold on to that deer, or even if you want to get it processed and then find out and turn it in, you get to go take another stab at it.
That's correct.
Not bad at all. Now, one way, and I saw one interesting suggestion. Richard from Wiggins had a suggestion on how to increase the number of samples that you get. Said offer an extra deer tag to the county that provides the most samples.
Yeah.
He's turning deer season into a game show here on the text line.
We're liable to run out of tags if that was the case.
Well, no, it'd only be one county. Just give them every hunter in that county. Now, of course, all of a sudden, whichever county won, everybody would be from there. Immediately, like that. But one way to increase it is to have mandatory sampling weekends, which we do have, right?
That's right. So that's going to be a new thing for this coming season. We talked earlier about the low sample numbers from South Mississippi. And so this year we've enacted 3 mandatory sampling weekends. The first weekend is going to be the Cwd Zones. So that's going to be opening weekend of deer season, November 21st and 22nd. So that's a Saturday, Sunday. So if a hunter harvests a deer on one of those 2 days or both of those days, then samples have to be submitted by 10 p.m. the day of harvest. Now, in addition to the permanent freezers, the 46, there will be temporary freezers as well as check stations. So there's going to be more opportunity.
Mississippi Outdoors Radio. Got just a few minutes left and a couple of things to clean up here. Chris Reed, Adam Butler with us, Russ Walsh, the Chief of Staff of the Wildlife Bureau, and got a question on the ceasefire text line about feeding as it relates to CWD. Do we have any new regulations? Has anything changed regarding feeding of deer?
No, nothing since last season. There were some discussions about that back in the summer that some folks may have heard about. But as of now, the seasons the zones, the CWD zones are still the same as they were at the end of last season. So supplemental feeding is banned in those zones, and again, that's a proactive measure to reduce the congregation of deer, to try to mitigate the spread of the disease. Is very, very important. So outside of the zone, supplemental feeding is still legal, and so it has to be done from above ground covered feeder. But if you are in a CWD management zone, supplemental feeding is banned. Now, the CWD management zone, basically up in the northwest corner and around Issaquena, right? That's right. And the maps of those are online. If you're unsure of where it is, or if you heard that it did change, those maps are online on our CWD page. And as a matter of fact, because Adam came prepared today, I think that map's in here, isn't it?
There's a smaller one.
I think there's a smaller version of that map right here, yeah. And basically, I'm just going to read them off. Warren, Issaquena, and the southern half of Sharkey County, basically. And then up in the north part of the state, from DeSoto all the way over to Alcorn, down to Lee, then back across through Pontotoc and Lafayette, down through Yalobusha, Grenada, Carroll, LaFleur, Sunflower, Tallahatchie. If you're in that area up there described by that line, no feeding. That's correct. Period. That's correct. But as Russ said, you can go to the website. You can see this for yourself. Right. This is available on the website. That's right. The annual report from last season and the updated hunting season guide for this season, both of them are online, available right now. And it's some good information, too. Yes. If you have any questions, trust me, the answer is on there on the website. So you can go there and figure out what's going on. But before we go to Mississippi Outdoors TV, because I know this is a big one, because we got a new episode, right?
Next week starts.
It's next week we got a new. I knew it was coming up.
But this one is people should tune into it this week.
We'll get to that.
Oh, I know we will.
With the exception of quail, I've never been a bird hunter. Okay, so I don't know much, and I got two wildlife biologists here basically in front of me, and Chris is here too. Mm-hmm. So I'm in my yard. Was it Saturday? I think. And I see the full, thank you, Chris. I see the full V-shaped flock of geese going over my head, honking as they go, headed due north. Is that where they're supposed to be going this time of year?
Those are probably residents.
It could have been some of the
pitching back and forth around town.
Yeah. See, I don't know anything about birds. Other critters, we can talk about that all day.
Brown bodies, blackheads.
Oh, yeah.
That's probably Canada geese, and those were probably just some residents, locals.
Okay.
They don't migrate.
Yeah, they
even when they're here, they can move back and forth, north, south, east, west, when they get down here, moving around from field to field.
Well, I don't know much about birds, but I thought I understood that when the temperature starts dropping and we're getting to the last quarter of the year, they're headed the other way, not north usually.
We're not quite, the actual geese that will be coming down here, it's not quite time for that yet.
You'll start catching some about next few weeks, hopefully. If you keep getting some fronts like that, you'll start hearing some geese from the north.
Okay. I'm sorry, I just had to clear that up for my own curiosity.
It's accepted here. You're safe.
Mississippi Outdoors TV.
Mississippi Outdoors TV. You are correct, Dave, in that next week we'll start a new season, and probably try to get Scooter in here next week maybe to talk about some of that, because he showed me the list of what's coming for this upcoming season, and it's a lot of diversity. It's some cool stuff. But this week, woodcock hunt on Cwd WMA, and then a creek wading trip for bass. So that's Thursday night, 7:30 on MPB, and then Saturday at 5:30, and then of course on YouTube and Facebook and those places.
And you'll be on this hunt, right?
This is we've aired this one before, but yeah. So it's
old Butler. So if nobody knows what he looks like, you can put a face with a voice.
There you go.
Now, wait, which one are you on, the woodcock or the wading?
The woodcock, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah,
that was my guess.
He's the only one they could get to go woodcock hunting.
You have to be different, I guess.
Just real quick, we have 20 seconds left before the music starts and we have to go. What's a woodcock?
All right, Dave. It's a little small bird, kind of quail size. They're migratory.
Tasty?
They actually do come
tasty?
If you cook them right.
Oh.
So I really used woodcock as an excuse and a gateway to get into upland bird hunting and have a bird dog. So people hunt them with pointing dogs just like with quail, and I always wanted to have a bird dog, and that was my excuse.
Okay. So. Yeah, see, I grew up with bird dogs at the house, quail hunting.
Yeah.
It was.
Now I've got several.
So yeah. So basically you found something else to spend money on to get your wife upset about.
No, my wife actually loves the dogs too, so it works out.
Yeah, here we go. Here comes the explaining. We'd have to ask her. Let's be honest, guys. Thank you so much. We appreciate you guys. Chris Reed, Russ Walsh, Adam Butler, Mississippi Outdoors Radio. We'll do it again next Monday.
Thanks,
have a great day.